But once I started talking about all of this stuff, it really opened up a Pandora's box, if you will, of all of the times. I'm a multi-rape survivor. I'm a trafficking survivor. We talked about me being Playboy's Miss September 1963. I was trafficked for 3 months by who I thought was my husband, after I became a playmate. He held my children hostage, he beat me, he starved me, and sent me out and marketed me to iconic stars in the film industry, people that you would be horrified to know about and what their proclivities were, and some sadomasochistic icons that the whole world holds in self-esteem, in esteem. In fact, one of them I was seeing on TV as they were honoring him, all of the comedians of the world, going to the USA, USO across the world, being the symbol of all America, and
wow.
And I knew all the dirty underbelly. And because I had gotten raped 3 times in New York in my high school year when I was away at private school at the Professional Children's School, I never talked about it, but I flirted with a lot of razor blades. And my parents never understood what happened, not that they ever asked, nor did I ever tell. And they made assumptions about what had happened with me and treated me, as did the entire family for the rest of their lives, with these misunderstandings. I didn't find out until after my parents died that my parents had been told that I lived in a brothel in my senior year of high school in Manhattan, which is something I had no idea about. And I thought that the whole reason they were angry was because I was ditching school and I had lost my virginity. So those were the things I was defending myself against. And so then they shipped me out to my grandma in West Hollywood to be a good girl. And I thought I was going for the summer, only I got dumped. And so I went into this big depression, summer of 61. I was 18 and got involved with a guy who, he was Afro-Cuban, he was a drummer. But what I didn't understand was he was a con man. And he saw my beautiful clothes, my good jewelry and everything, and knew that I was getting an inheritance when I was 21, and hooked up with me. He saw that I was lost and depressed, typical story.
Right.
And he had the idea with another photographer that I was going to be a Playboy centerfold. It was a magazine I had never heard of. I'd never seen a pinup magazine in my life. And I thought I was taking these pictures for my husband because we went to Baja California to get married. And I didn't know that it wasn't legal in this country unless you registered it in this country. He knew, and he knew that I was traditional and naive enough to believe that I had to do the traditional wife thing and turn over my money to my husband, which I did. My mother always told me, honey, I'm terrible at arithmetic, and so will you be, but don't worry. Your husband
will take care of it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
which is what so many young girls were told.
Exactly. And so at 18 and 19, that's exactly what I did. And I thought these pictures were to advance his career as an aspiring photographer, not having any idea that being a centerfold in Playboy was going to be a big deal. It only paid $1,000. Of which I never saw one penny. Oh. I think I got a ruffled white lace blouse, a little short black skirt, some new flip-flops, and a new bra.
Wow. And how long were you with this person?
Well, 2 years I managed to escape, but when I did try to escape, he caught me. I was leaving with the baby. I had to leave his 2 children, who that was one of the ways that he always controlled all of the women, because I was not the only one. I think he must have had a root, and he would take the children, his children, and give them to you to be the mother and make you feel responsible. And then he'd go out for public about Cosby. Somebody had sent me an excerpt from one of his books, and it told a story about when he was a little boy, about 4, and his father came home drinking. Absolutely. I think some of the earliest recorded drugging and raping victims were from the 60s. I think the 16th that came out in 2014, but
people, if they can listen to the first program
with women. And Lou Ferrigno's wife, Carla, was a pool bunny. She shot pool at the Playboy Club. And she and I were on Dr. Oz together, I don't know, two Aprils ago. And she was invited out to dinner with the Cosbys and by this gentleman that had invited her to dinner, who was a very nice man. And she said that after dinner, the Cosbys invited them back to their house, and they were shooting pool. And of course, she was a sharpshooter. And then all of a sudden, and so she was focusing on her shot, and all of a sudden realized that her date had disappeared, and so had Mrs. Cosby. And she remembers asking Mr. Cosby, well, where's your wife? And he told her that she had probably gone to bed. Well, so what wives, I mean, really think about this. How many wives do you know that would leave their husband alone with this gorgeous blonde bunny?
South of the border, down Mexico way. That's where I fell in love when the stars above came out to play. And now as I wander...
Hello there, all you expat wannabes. I'm Johnny Mueller, and you're listening to The Expat Files, Living in Latin America, the show that tells you just what it's like to live, work, play, and or retire down here in Latin America. It's a mix of the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great, and it's all right here, so let's get started.
Red letter day today. It's show number 900 for me. And good old expat Eddie, who hasn't made an appearance on the show in quite a while, wants me to tell you all that he's alive. In fact, that's how he checks in with me. He writes, estoy vivo, which means I'm alive. And sometimes he writes, hasta hoy vivo, which means, until now anyway, I'm alive. Anyway, we'll be checking in with some brand new Expat Eddie stories shortly, so stay tuned for that. Wow, show 900. Hell, you think I'd run out of things to babble about, huh? And all in all, after a couple of million downloads, I guess, more and more people have figured out it's time to have a plan B. But you knew that already, right? Or you wouldn't be listening. Speaking of having a plan B, I'm going to throw in my seminar plug right now and get it over with. My next Expat Insider Seminar will kick off January 10th, 2020. That's a Friday night, and we'll go all the way through to the following Thursday night, January 16th. Half the time or more, we'll be hanging in the Guatemalan Altiplano region. The perpetual spring-like weather, you'll experience that. And then every morning, we'll have a lecture from 8 till noon, and then we'll be off with boots-on-the-ground excursions to some of the most fabulous and mind-blowing places. And yes, we'll be going to one of those gigantic food markets I'm always talking about. So you'll be able to see for yourself why fresh food and vegetables down here cost a third to a fifth of what they cost up by you in the States. Then we'll be seeing doctors, hospitals, real estate, city living, burb living, various subdivisions, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great. Well, you know, the whole fire hose treatment. And of course, Expat Insider Seminar repeat offenders will get $1,000 off the regular price. And I've got that extra sign-up bonus offer. That is, for everyone who signs up for the seminar, you'll get a free 1-hour Skype or phone consult, just you and me, where we can talk about everything and anything that has to do with the seminar. Your plan B, starting a business, housing, cryptocurrencies, apartment living, off-the-grid living, healthcare in Latin America, or the price of hockey pucks, whatever you want to talk about. For all the info, the itinerary, how to sign up, the pricing, etc., just go to www.theexpatfiles.com and click on Johnny's seminar link. or just go to www.theexpatfiles.com/seminar. And of course, you could do what a lot of people do, that is, kill two birds with one stone. Stay on an extra week after the seminar and apply for your Guatemalan residency. If that's in your plan, our seminar lawyer will hold your hand through all of that. Anyway, hope to see you there. Now, you heard me mention that at the seminar, we'll be visiting one of those gigantic fresh vegetable and produce markets, which leads us right into this email from John. He says, Johnny, still playing catch up with 20% of your shows I've not heard yet, mostly in the last 2 years. So I don't know if I've missed any wisdom from you about this particular subject. I'm almost completely vegan, but I'm willing to taste Latin American food that contains animal products at least once, but I wouldn't want to eat a complete meal. And I have no intention of giving up being mostly or totally vegan in the long run. I would probably try dishes, though, where the non-vegan components can be easily removed, which rules out food that has been extensively cooked or makes extensive use of non-vegan sauces. So, Johnny, the question is, how are vegans in Latin America dealing with all of this? It seems to me that at least 75% of the food down there contains animal flesh, dairy, eggs, or all three. So, short of exclusively doing my own cooking or opening a restaurant, would I have a rough time staying mostly vegan? Would that be a no, yes, or a maybe? Regards, Johnny, from expat wannabe and gonna be, John, from the belly of the beast. All right, John, all good questions. And I know you're up there in the belly of the beast, but I'm kind of thinking you've never been to Latin America, at least not off the Gringo Tourist Trail. Because if you've spent any time down here, you probably meandered over to one of those gigantic fruit and vegetable markets, and being a vegan or nearly a vegan, your eyes would have practically popped out of your head. There's simply nothing like them, not up where you live. And vegetarians, vegans, natural food types, it's like seventh heaven for them. Because the truth is, there are many vegans who've come down to my Expat Insider seminars. A lot of them ended up staying in Latin America, mostly in Central America. And they've got nothing but amazing things to say about the food down here. And you know, if you visit one of these guys or gals and you walk into the kitchen or pantry, you'll see gigantic quantities of fruits and vegetables of the sort you just don't see up in the States. Even at those very expensive non-GMO organic farmers markets. Nope, there's really no comparison. So not only have I never heard a single complaint from a vegan down here, you know, it's just the opposite. I hear nothing but good things about the quantity, quality, and, of course, the prices. Hey, as for me, I hit the markets all the time. I usually go once every 2 weeks, and I stock up with vast quantities. Because, you know, health and nutrition are kind of my hobbies, too. Ever since my dear old dad croaked, heart attack, 54, ex-professional sports guy, and still at 54, quite thin, no weight problem, but he was on the all-American junk food diet, had to have his bread, lunch meat, candy bars, and donuts every day. Not to mention he was addicted to Diet Coke and Tums. And I'll tell you, the day he died is when I swore off all that stuff. I have not had a fast food hamburger, hot dog, anything like that, or processed meats in 35 years. That's when he passed around 35 years ago. I have zero fast food, junk food, packaged food, or processed food around the house. Though sometimes when I'm out at a restaurant, I'll lax up and have a nice big slab of cheesecake, but I know myself all too well, and if I have junk food or any kind of fast food around the house, I'll get up at 2 in the morning and eat it. So I just avoid temptation and don't have it around. Though talking to gringos and expats who are not very health conscious, they're not very picky, discerning, or knowledgeable, or don't care what they're putting down their cake hole. The unfortunate thing, at least from my viewpoint, is so many gringos and expats decide they have to eat American food brands, you know, the imported stuff. And that stuff's here, all right. I mean, they got Walmart and Costco everywhere, so you can get practically every well-known name brand of packaged and processed stuff you're used to getting back home. But then, of course, your favorite U.S. crap food brands will have to be imported. For example, a food I never eat, ketchup. Now, you go into a Latin American food store, even a Walmart or a Costco, they'll carry 2 or 3 brand names of ketchup that's made locally, or at least within the country or nearby country. And if you're in one of the bigger supermarkets, they'll have Heinz ketchup too, which just might be twice the price of the local stuff. So you might ask yourself, why is that stuff even in the store when they've got a couple of local brands? Won't they suffice? Well, because there's a market for it. With gringos and expats being a very small part of that market, unless you're in a gringoized tourist area. Then American products will be seen in most all stores. But when you're not on the tourist trail or near one, most of the demand for American labels will be coming from the Latino gringo wannabe sector. Because, the image is firmly implanted in almost every Latino's mind that anything made in the US or Europe is better than the local stuff. And that's definitely not true. And the perfect example, ketchup, which if you look at the label, you'll see contains a hell of a lot of sugar. And with the more expensive US label Heinz brand, that sugar is high fructose corn syrup, and that's a recipe for obesity, diabetes, and all kinds of other health problems. But you knew that already. Meanwhile, the local brands have regular cane sugar. Still not good for you, but I don't have to tell you guys the difference between real sugar and high fructose corn syrup. So there's really two problems with buying imported foods here in Latin America. Number one, they're going to jack up your cost of living because they're always more expensive. And number two, your health will slowly deteriorate if you don't try to wean yourself off the good old American diet. The truth is, locally made and produced products are often very good and much healthier, definitely cheaper. Now, John also questions in that email, if you're a vegan, will you have to do much of your own cooking? Well, it seems like these days even the hole-in-the-wall restaurants will have some kind of vegan or vegetarian selections on the menu. So you'll have no trouble if you eat out a lot. And the closer you are to a tourist or gringo area, the more you're likely to run into vegetarian restaurants. It's all the rage, And even when you're way off the gringo tourist trail, if you happen to be in a wealthy or more high-end area, the buildings, the cars, the roads, everything looks first world, you're sure to find some vegan and vegetarian restaurants there too, because Latinos with dough are extreme gringo wannabes, and since vegetarian and vegan restaurants are trendy up in the States, naturally, you'll find them in the wealthier districts here in Latin America, too. Another great example of the gringo wannabe effect, sushi restaurants. I mean, hell, that's how some 10 years ago or so now, expat Eddie made all his dough. He opened his first tiny little sushi restaurant. Actually, it was a kiosk in a mall. It was totally off the gringo tourist trail. Where do you think all his clients came from? Well, they weren't gringos because there were no gringos around. They were Latino gringo wannabes with more dough than brains. Which brings up another point. Don't ever confuse a Latino with money or a nice car for a well-rounded Latino with a legitimate brain. They don't correlate all that much. Seems with Latinos, the more dough or credit they have, the more they show off. Down here, it's a hard and fast rule. The bigger the car, the smaller the dick, the bigger the dickhead. Though I guess it's like that in the States too, isn't it? Alright, let's move on, and this time we'll hit on the subject of that never-ending Venezuelan saga. It might surprise you to know that I've got lots of listeners in Venezuela. And lots of listeners up in the States who are part Venezuelan or married to Venezuelanos. Check out this email I just got from Rod. He says, "Hi Johnny, I'm addicted to your show. I was born in Venezuela, but I've lived most of my life outside of it. And I did elementary school in France. But I did go to high school in Caracas in the 1980s. I remember that on the way to my parents' house there was a broken pipe